But I feel as though this conversation is probably one of the most important conversations that we've had to date, simply because of the historic value of what this conference is going to bring to the table.
I'm ecstatic to have these brothers here tonight. First and foremost, you brothers know him already from one of our more popular videos. Senior Grand Warden of the Grand Lodge of New Mexico, Steve Almager. And then we have Rusty Booth. He's a brother in El Paso and part of all the Masonic community over there in West Texas that we all forget about, but we all love, and we're glad that they're part of us. But we're pulling them back in. We're bringing them back into relevance.
Rusty
and
Booth
then
is a West Texas legend.
A West Texas legend.
West Texas legend himself.
I don't know about that.
West Texas and North Chihuahua legend.
There we go. There we go.
Branched out.
Absolutely. And then from the old country of Mexico, we have our brother Alejandro Garcia.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we this is the first time we've had 3 jurisdictions represented together. So this is the first for us. It's very exciting.
Yes, 3 grand jurisdictions. That is awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Rusty, how did you become a Freemason?
First of all, thank you, Justin and Dennis, for having us. Really appreciate it. It's great that our little neck of the woods gets some kind of eyeballs on us. So we really appreciate that. I joined Masonry probably 2009, 2010. I was initiated at Fraternity Lodge 1111, downtown El Paso. It's a beautiful building in the El Paso Scottish Rite. It was kind of a weird way. I think whenever I tell people, when they say, well, why do you join Masonry? It's like, you can really never tell, it's just kind of you kind of find it. And I'm a history major. In my senior thesis in school, I did a thing on male platonic relationships, or the lack thereof, and how it's impacted society. And Masonry just kept coming up in all the writings, that I started when I was going through there, that Masonry was like a key and integral part into men's lives, from all the way up through probably the 60s. And you could see a decline in like male friendship patterns, and kind of male depression coming up after that, with the lack of friendship. And so I kept hearing about all this Masonry stuff, and I had a girlfriend at the time that's like, oh, I got a buddy who's a Mason, you should go talk to him. And so I went and talked to him, and the rest is history. So
nice.
So I've been at a Mason since 2010. I don't remember when I got raised, probably in 11, maybe 12. I became master in 2016 at 1111. I also joined a small rural lodge called Fort Hancock Lodge, and then I became master of that in 2018 or 2019. And then we changed our name from Fort Hancock to Taft Diaz, much to the chagrin of the rest of the state of Texas, because we had changed our name like 2 or 3 times within a span of like 2 years. But hopefully we're going to stick with Taft Diaz, and there's historical importance to that name, and I think it lends really well with Alex and everything going down in Mexico. So we're really, really, really proud of it, and we're proud of the relationships that are being built through the lodge, and kind of bringing more to the value that Masonry gets than just cooking a pancake dinner and complaining about who's going to wash dishes and all the stuff that usually happens. We're actually getting into the marrow of Masonry. So I really appreciate it, giving us this platform to talk about the friendship with Mexico, and also with New Mexico. I think we got some good things on the horizon.
Alejandro, so what induced you to become a Mason?
So first, let me just thank you all for having me. It's really pleasant to be here, especially because I know we're amongst friends, and it's really nice to see you. We've all well, like, except I don't think I've met Justin in person, but for Dennis, you and I have met in person. And so I think we're, you know, we can actually be considered friends, because that's the magic of Freemasonry, right? That's you meet someone once, you start talking about Freemasonry, you start sharing your values and your ideals, and it turns out that they're very similar. And then you can, just kind of hit it off and spark a friendship just like that. With Steve and Rusty, it was something really similar. And so, just thank you for having me and for inviting me in this. I'm gonna say historic night because you have 3 jurisdictions and you've never had that before. So just allow me to declare it like that. Now, as far as like how I joined, I was initiated April 19th of 2000. I'm a member right now of Leandro Semillan, number 49, and who's is a lodge within the jurisdiction of Grand Lodge Cosmos in Chihuahua. But back into the year 2000, when I was initiated, I was 18 years old, and there I have. So Freemasonry had always mystified me personally, because the history books in Mexico, like when you go to when you read the elementary school history books, they talk about Freemasonry. And so
wow,
they do. And so back then,
that is very cool.
Yeah, so Mexico didn't really have political parties. It had Masonic rites. That was what the political parties were. And so you learn about Mexican history via the fact that, you had basically, and I mean, it's going to sound almost like insane, but you had the York Rite and the Scottish Rite. And so those were the main political parties for all intents and purposes in Mexico. And so that's how they teach you history in Mexico. So
yes, that's what I heard.
Yeah.
I heard that you used to be able to tell who was in charge based on the direction of the head of the eagle on the flag. You would know if it was the Scottish Rite or the York Rite. That's just what I was told. I don't know that for sure, but
I think so too. I've heard that as well.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
But basically, since you're a kid, if you like one of those kids who's who likes like history maybe a bit, or you're reading between the lines, that spark like starts right away, and you're like in 5th grade, 6th grade, and so I always wanted to know what that was about. And then I sort of never really heard anything. I knew that I lived basically 4 blocks from the Masonic temple. I lived downtown in Juarez, and that's pretty much where the temple is. So on our way to El Paso, from my house, we would always drive by the Masonic temple. So like it always sparked my interest, especially more because it has all the stairs with the stairs going
symbols
up
on
the door.
Yes,
they have the letters, like a single letter that some of you or most of you will recognize as 3 words, 5 words, 7 words that are used between the first 3 degrees, but it's just a letter and then 3 dots.
Right.
And so the first letter and 3 dots. And so and then the square and compass. And so I always was sort of attracted. And then one day, we had a friend whose dad was really well sort of positioned and in government in Juarez, like in my hometown or where I grew up, and he was a member of the lodge, and they were trying to create a youth group. So the Masonic youths group in Juarez, or in Mexico overall, and I think it's almost like Latin America, is the AJEF, which stands for Asociación de Jóvenes Esperanza de la Fraternidad, which you could almost translate to association of young people who are the hope of the fraternity. And so they were trying to build an AJEF group, and time passed and they couldn't really like put it together. And so eventually they said, you know what, these guys are like, they're already 18. Why don't we just get them in the big leagues and make them EAs? So yeah, I was initiated with my best friend, who's now my compadre, So yeah, this was 22 years ago.
Very cool. Very
I love
cool.
that.
And for those of you who don't know the IHEF, it's similar to Dimile in the States. So it's a young group for young men to grow up with a fraternal background and learning some mysteries, but just not the Freemason mysteries, but close.
Exactly.
They-
Since we're looking at different jurisdictions, I was just curious: is it comparable to what we do in Texas, or is it harder?
Right now the process is it is difficult. Our constitution, and I think this is true for a lot of the Grand Lodges in Mexico and Latin America. Officially there's very little requirements, right? It's you have to be a free man, of good custom or good behavior, and you have to believe in God. So officially, right? Of course, man of an adult age. So those are the official requisites to
Right.
become a Freemason, which I think it's pretty much same deal
Yeah, it's
as,
about the same.
right?
Mhm.
But we do have an investigation process, and it is kind of thorough. You need to go to the to the I don't know, like what forgive me, this may happen to me like as we are having our conversation, because I know, like, I mean, know the term in Spanish. I just don't know like what the right translation would be. So think about like going down to the court, and so you need to get a letter saying that like there's no open trials or
Oh
indictments
wow.
made
So
against
yeah,
you.
so you have to actually get a record from the courthouse saying that there's nothing on your. That's awesome.
Yeah, so you need to have that. So you need to of course, like go through like a very heavy interviewing process. And so you need to be balloted, not just in the lodge that is trying to admit you, but also we do what we call I don't even think there's a translation for this, but in Spanish it's almost like a radio, like literally like a radio. And so what that means is just like broadcasting to all the lodges in the jurisdiction, not just yours, that
Who's petitioning?
this
Yeah.
person, you have exactly petitioned. You like show the pictures, you show like basically all the information we have. And if
Wow.
someone within the jurisdiction knows you, they can black box
Wow. Yeah.
ballot you. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the
Wow.
process. It is a heavy process.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you
I
for
have
sharing
I
that.
have a question, Alex. You said a belief in God. I know in the state it a belief in a God, right? It's not a specific God. Is it a specific God in Mexico?
It's not
Like,
a specific God. No.
okay. Okay.
And that makes
We
because
don't accept atheists. Basically, it's the thing.
Okay.
yeah, but it does make sense though that it's not a specific because y'all are very esoteric compared to many places that I've been. You brothers really got it going on. Y'all have some of the most beautiful temples I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, thanks. I could say exactly the same thing about the temples in the States for sure. Yeah, they're beautiful.
Well,
Yeah, some of them get there, right?
Oh yeah.
you kind of scared me for a minute. I thought you said beautiful dimples. I was like, whoa.
Well, Rusty, there's no denying your dimples, man. I'm sorry. Starstruck.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Well,
go ahead,
so
Dennis.
now what I'd like to do is, now that we've got a basic idea, when we talked to Right Worshipful Amager before, just as a quick wrap up for other people, he was a lot like us, where it was just we decided to do it. We asked somebody, they said, well, why were you waiting this long to be asked? Why did you take so long to ask? Because we all knew you from so that was pretty cool about our interview with you that I really enjoyed, and that
So-
was that your whole community knew were Masons before you became a Mason.
Since we didn't properly introduce Brother Omegar, what I'll do is I'll put a link to our interview. So pause this video, go watch the interview, and 2 hours later after that, come finish this.
You'll enjoy it. You'll
Do
thoroughly
due
enjoy it.
diligence.
It was one of our best interviews because we really got into some stuff that not everybody is excited to talk about.
Oh, we didn't even finish. It was an
We-
unfinished conversation.
We just started, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel with all three of these brothers here is that I could sit and visit with every one of them, you know, one-on-one all night long and just visit and go through all the stuff that we know in Freemasonry. I mean, it's just that kind of a.
I wouldn't let him do that to any of y'all. Don't worry.
So anyways, so now let's get to the meat and potatoes of this discussion. The binational Masonic conference. Wow. Talk about the right time and place to have a conference like that was this year. You know, our Grand Master #1 traveled all over because he just loves to travel, and I don't blame him. I do too. And I think all of y'all do as well, and that's why we all get along so well. But now you've created this connection between the two countries that we've needed for quite some time, in not only in Freemasonry, but just as two nations, you know. And I think that it's really the beginning of something really nice that we can take hold of and expand on in the future for our communities, and be the leaders in that connection that we've been missing for so long. So whose brainchild was it? What happened? What conspired between you three that all of a sudden this happens? Where did this come from?
I can tell you where I first heard of it, and I think they heard it at the same time. Was in July of 2021. We was approached by Fernando, which is correct me, Alex, if I misspeak on that. He's the president of the federation down there in Mexico over all the Masonic jurisdiction. Is that correct?
So yeah, the federation, and it's called Confederación or Confederation of Grand Lodges of Mexico, and it's the exact equivalent of the Conference of Grand Masters of North America. Except I don't know if they do this, but in the Conference of Grand Masters of North America, but they choose a president over there. So Fernando Martinez, he's a past Grand Master of Cosmos, and he's currently the president of that conference.
Nice.
So when we went to, we were getting ready to go, I had no idea who Rusty was or Alex was. Actually, Brad Billings put me in touch with Rusty, right? Because Brad was in Jamaica, and Russ was getting all the travel arrangements set up, and we decided I hooked up with Rusty, and he hooked me up, got me in touch with Alex. We started talking before this conference that they had down there, and in Silao, and so we all met up in El Paso, stayed the night in El Paso, and the one guy that didn't show up was Brad, right? And Brad was supposed to be there.
Imagine that.
But in his defense, it was coming right out of COVID, you know.
Yeah.
He got stuck in Jamaica, couldn't catch a flight back out.
Actually,
so he missed it.
Actually, is the Dominican Republic, so that's a good
Oh, yeah,
place to get
yeah.
stuck at.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me.
Yeah. So anyway, we traveled down there. It was a great time, and I don't know, we was all sitting around a table or something like that at dinner or something, and Fernando said something that he wanted to start a conference between the two nations. And that's the first time I heard of it, and I thought it was a great idea. And
Actually, Steve, I think it goes back a little bit further than that, because you
Well,
were talking about it with Brad before we even went to Salau. Because it was right after the whole Chamizal thing.
Well, that's
So
why he
when
thought it was a great idea.
yeah. But come to find out, though, a little history is New Mexico 20 years ago set up a bi-national conference, and it lasted for about 3 years, and that was it.
Mm.
And Alex, you may know one of them, past Grandmaster Jeff Jordan used to come to Mexico all the time. Him and Bill Childress, and they tried to get it going. So, and for some reason it just didn't work. And what happens in these things is they have this grandiose idea of how this thing is supposed to go, and if it doesn't start off huge, they don't even want to start, right? Where our thinking is start it small and grow it, right?
Yeah,
Just
grassroots.
grow it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the first time that I heard it from down there from Fernando. And we what was monumental in my opinion was what happened this past November. Was we was all in this same room where President Taft and President Diaz was. The same room where they were at. And at all the grandmasters, there was what, 11 or 12 of them?
Yep.
11 or 12 from Mexico, then Brad, myself, and our fantastic interpreter Alex was in there, and
Yeah.
which you really don't
Thank
know how much
goodness.
you
Yeah.
really don't know
He
how
worked
much
his tail off.
how much Alex helped me out down in Salau. It was these two guys down here know, Russ and Alex know, but anyway, what we walked away with was a date, and that was important. You we was sitting around talking, and there was a lot of great talk going around, and it honestly it looked like it was going in circles, you know. And then we finally just said, listen, we can talk about what we want to do, but if we don't set a date, we'll never move forward. And that's what we did. We
Gotta
set
put it
that
into
date.
action. Yeah.
We set that date and moved forward, and I think it's going to be great. I do know for sure that we have R3, Mexico, Texas, and New Mexico. We also have Arizona for sure is on board. And what we took out of that, what we've also found out is California and Baja, Mexico, they already have this conference.
Oh,
They already have it.
Oh, okay.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So their next conference, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is in July. And they want us to go down to see how that conference is ran to kind of, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. If they've got a good thing going down there, let's go down there and see if we can mimic that.
You are going to
right?
send me an invite, right? I
Oh,
am
yeah.
going to get invited to that, aren't I?
Sure. And it's going to be in Ensenada. It's going to be in Ensenada, and that's a pretty nice town. But yeah, I think Rusty's right. It initially started at the Walmart deal, that they got started going down there, and there was 3 states, 2 countries and 3 jurisdictions represented down there, and that was probably the thing that got us started. I would think.
That was the spark that started the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Now we just need to fan the flames, right?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the reasons I didn't really respond initially when you asked the question is, honestly, I was trying to think back to like the exact moment where this binational conference idea came about.
Yes.
And I just couldn't pinpoint it. And I'm sure like if you ask Steve, like Steve has like the moment that where he knows that where it happened. I'm sure Rusty has his own. I have my own. But again, I couldn't really even like pinpoint it, and I don't even think it matters. I think what does matter is what Brother Steve was saying. I think we made really good progress this past November, and I just want to sort of re-emphasize what Brother Steve said, because just think about the setting. Like, we had most worshipful Brad Billings here in Juarez, down like with his entourage, and we have brothers from New Mexico and some other brothers from El Paso, and of course a ton of brothers from Juarez and from Cosmos and the rest of Chihuahua. We're all walking downtown in Juarez, where just think of the setting. A lot, it's like your mercado, like your typical mercado. Just a bunch of people, like, you know, with their you know, their stands, and just like life is going on in Juarez, right? Like, you know, cars passing by, everybody just like, you know, just going about their lives. And then you have this group of brothers like suited up, just walking around Juarez, going from like historical milestone to historical milestone. And then eventually, once we get to this final milestone, which was what used to be the town hall in Juarez, that's where like the mayor used to dispatch business, and the city council as well. That's like the official place, the actual place where like business like used to take place. There's a new building now, but that building is historic because that's where Taft and Diaz met. And so we have a bunch of brothers and 10 grandmasters from you know, Texas. We have representation from New Mexico with Brother Steve, and you have about like 8 additional grandmasters from Chihuahua, and we're just like, they're having a closed door meeting on exactly the like the binational conference, amongst other things. Honestly, just like, I was really happy that I'm glad that I can like speak a little bit of English so that I can be in this like room. Like, it was just really, I mean, they wanted me there just so that I could translate, and that's fine. Like, I don't mind, but it was just really interesting to just witness that session. And one of the best things that came out of this meeting was what brother, you know, what Steve was saying. It was the 3 grandmasters trying to get let's just like start by setting a date. When's a good date? And it turns out that first week of November is a good date for all 3 Grand Lodges: Chihuahua, New Mexico, and Texas. So that was like step 1. And I think it took, you know, even that meeting to just like agree on that date. Of course, all of the grandmasters who were present are invited. And then we had the grandmaster from Baja California. And that's where he told us that this isn't, we're not like reinventing a wheel here, honestly. They have a conference called the 3 Californias Conference. There's of course like the California state of the United States, but then there's 2 Californias in down south. There's Baja California Norte and Baja California Sur, and they already have their conference of the 3 Californias. And so they said, hey, like, our next conference is going to be in July in Ensenada. Why don't you come over? You know, you can pick our brains, you can see how we do things, and if something works for you, you know, you can take it for your conference. And so I think that was you know, some other like good thing that came out of that. But the most important thing is just the date. We have a date set, first week of November next year, and it's going to be at least the 3 Grand Lodges that we have, and you know, and other Grand Lodges that have already signed up. And so I think that was like crucial, like step 1. Now, Steve talked about the Salao trip. And I think this is the kind of thing that like almost like inadvertently like starts like snowballs that you don't really know like where they're gonna end. Like, Brother Steve came to Salao, Guanajuato. It's a state down south. We all flew there from Juarez. and it was basically we went to the election of officers for the confederation that we just talked about, like the National Confederation of Grand Lodges in Mexico, and that's where our brother Fernando Martinez became the president. Brother Steve was there, and he was almost like on a diplomatic mission. Brother Rusty was there; he was like doing the same thing, and Brad was going to be there as well. Unfortunately, he couldn't be there. But I think that's one of the things that got sort of like the ball rolling. I want to say, by the way, that during that conference, I think like Steve and Rusty were like rock stars, because imagine like you have all these brothers from Mexico, who like may not be super used to just fraternizing with the brothers from the United States. Like here in the
Right.
border, it's really common, right? Like Rusty, like he comes to my lodge in Juarez. I visit him in his lodge. We've been to like New Mexico a bunch of times. So like it's really common for us to just fraternize. You have to understand like how big our like the border community is. And it's almost like we share a lot of things, family,
Right.
culture. So it's normal. But when you have American Masons down south, you guys are rock stars. And so I think they had a really good time. The brothers in Mexico like really enjoyed just exchanging like Freemasonry, like their Freemason, like their views of Freemasonry with the brothers from the United States. And then one final thing I'll say is Rusty actually like at the end he was given the floor, and he like he gave a speech in Spanish to thank for like the opportunity of being there. So like I know that he looks like all güero and whatnot, but he actually like speaks Spanish there.
He is
So
definitely
yeah.
My question, and what's probably on a lot of the listeners' minds, is what exactly would this conference entail? Aside from just bringing us together and hopefully strengthening bonds, what should we expect from a conference?
I think the most important thing when it comes to what we can exchange that's a lot different from what you would get if you go to a Grand Lodge communication or whatnot is just the kind of idiosyncrasies of both of the jurisdictions and how they interact. A couple cases in point, in Cosmos at least, they don't have dues cards. They have like patents, so if someone's gonna, so we've had Mexican brothers who've come to our lodge to visit, and we ask for dues cards, and they don't have dues cards, and it was kind of like this thing, like they're like, we don't know what this is. We've had a couple guys that have affiliated, and it's been a process to get them affiliated into the Texas lodges when they don't have a dues card,
So
and then it becomes,
what do you mean when you say patent? Like, what is that?
it's like a
It's like what you get
diploma.
when you're Scottish Rite, you get a patent as well.
I see. Okay.
So
It's
when a Mason gets initiated in Mexico, they get a patent with their picture, and it has all their stuff, and it's this big, almost like a diploma thing, and they don't carry it around in their pockets like we do. So like to get credentialed, it's a little bit different of a process. The other thing too, every time I've gone down to Mexico and we start talking, it's like those differences come out, like the Mexicans do their initiations different. They have different ways of communicating with each other. And frankly, there's a lot of things that I've lifted from them that I've tried to incorporate into our lodges. And it's a really cool thing. And I think it's it's kind of a vice versa thing.
So yeah.
One of the things I think I might have mentioned it in the last time we visited is New Mexico shut down for 2020 for almost a full year, right? So from March of 2020 till June 1st of 2021, we were shut down. We could not do any work. I ended up joining a Texas lodge in Odessa because they were still meeting. It wasn't the same. There was something I was missing. And I want you to understand, I was a Grand Lodge officer at the time. And these two guys right here, Alex and Rusty, if it wouldn't been for them taking me under their wing and taking me down to Palau And what I witnessed in Salau, I was thinking of dropping out. And that changed my whole perspective down there in Salau. They're
So-
doing something down there that we are not doing. So one of the things
So-
that Alex and I talked about one time, we're really good on admin over here in the state, right? We can do really good admin work, right? Where Alex was telling me that's where they lack is on the admin side of it, right? Well, this is one of the things at the conference I think that we can probably address and help them out on that side of it, because we are pretty good at it. But the Freemasonry side of it down in Mexico, they can teach us a ton. I mean, a ton.
It sounds
And
like
I foresee this conference being a conference where we can sit across the table, sit in front of each other, and figure out what the problems is. So I look forward. I'm really looking forward to it. Even if we go down there with a blank agenda, I think sitting across the table from these guys and them learning from us and us learning from them is a win-win.
Right now, the relationship between our jurisdictions is amazing. Like the fraternity we have, at least in the metro area here, we have between like El Paso, Las Cruces, Juarez, and I think I would even like extend it to the whole jurisdictions, is great. I don't think it's always been like that, and the only reason why it's great right now is because we've actually like made a conscious effort for that to be the case.
Yes.
So I think we need to this binational conference is a couple things. So it's our conscious effort to actively try to make this the case at our level, but also we're trying to extend the good relationship that we have to the whole border. Just think about all the states that border with each other, and all the cities, like all the communities. These communities are pretty much intertwined. Like you have people who live in Juarez, work in El Paso, work in Las Cruces, live in Juarez, and they have families on both sides of the border. They go back and forth as if you're like just basically like going to the other side of town. And we need to make sure that that relationship at the Masonic level reflects what happens in the community. Because I think just the basis for any relationship, not just like a diplomatic relationship between like two Grand Lodges, the basis for any relationship, you could say that it's like communication and trust. So if we don't communicate, we're not going to continue to have a relationship that we have. And if we don't meet, if we don't like get to know each other, we're not going to trust each other. Like we're just going to be strangers. So I would say like at the fundamental level, the reason why we need to have this conference is to establish communication and trust. Now, from there, you can like have a bunch of takes on what the conference needs to like cover. There's a lot of things, and I really appreciate the kind words that you've said about like our, like Mexican Masonry and like, Cosmos. But the truth is there's a lot that we can learn from each other, like from both sides. Mexico, you mentioned this earlier, Dennis, where like Mexican Masonry is really good at like the esoteric stuff,
Right.
and we're really good at like the academic like Masonic stuff, and we meet every week. So like our stated meetings are every week, and we typically meet in the EA degree because we want EAs to be part of like we want them to develop a sense of membership. And then we grill them. Like we have really intense debates on Masonic, academia, and that's what Freemasonry is. And then we go into
that is awesome.
And so we do have that, but we wish we had the administrative just acumen that you all have, and so I think we can learn from each other in that sense. We can identify problems, specifically what Steve is talking about. We can identify good actors and bad actors. I think that's a problem that we have right now. And from conversations that we've had, like there's already several potential constitutional amendments that we can take I'm sure the same could be true or could be said on y'all's side as well. Like once you start identifying the problems, you can start fixing them legally. And then the final
Right.
thing, and the final thing is, uh, so learning from each other, the administrative, the esoteric part, identifying problems, you know, good actors and bad actors, but realistically, it's just to fraternize. I think like the bottom line, you know, just fraternizing and being able to develop the kind of friendship that we have, like for instance, between the three of us. And we're not the only ones. Like I know this guy, I mean, I don't know him, but I know about this guy, Fred Cano. I think he's from Grand Lodge, Texas, and I think he's a rep with Grand Lodge, Tamaulipas. Like he goes, from what I know, he goes to the Grand Communications of Grand Lodge, Tamaulipas. We've had brothers from El Paso coming to our Grand Communication. I'm sure it happens in other jurisdictions as well. So just fraternizing, I think, bottom line is what this should be about.
Like, how much does the average Mason pay to be a member in Mexico, or in your, at least in your part?
Man, you know what? It really varies. You have lodges where like your dues might be $10 a month. That's the minimum that you're gonna find, because that's the a little bit less than that is what you need to send to Grand Lodge. So the least that someone like the dues could be is $10 a month, all the way up to 25 dollars a month. So so yeah, anywhere from like 120 bucks a year to, someone do the math here, around 300.
250, 280.
Yeah.
Yeah, 250, 280, 300.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in order to get in, like your initiation fee would be somewhere between $50 to, like, I think my lodge is going at like 300 right now. Yeah.
For all the degrees, 300.
No, for joining
I see. Oh, like the okay, okay,
the EA.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, even
So-
at $10 a month, that's higher than probably most lodges I've been to here in Texas. So that's good.
And Justin,
I don't think I know an average from y'all, but yeah.
I would say probably about $100 per year
Okay.
is the average here in Texas. Sorry, Rusty.
one of the cool things that Alex's lodge does that I think that we could adopt, you know, just about any lodge in Texas, is we talk about charity and all that. They have at every lodge meeting, and they meet every week. They have this like velvet bag. It's a fairly large bag. And I don't know, Alex, it's the marshal or the master ceremonies that carries the bag, and they go to each person, and it's kind of like
Like an almoner's fund.
it's an almoner's fund, where like kind of like passing the plate. But what's really interesting about it is the brother brings the bag to each person, and he opens the bag, and then he looks away, you know, so he turns his head so he's not looking, and you put in however much you want, so you can put in 10 bucks, 20 bucks or whatever. But the rub is like, and all that money goes to charity at the end. But the rub is, if you need that money as an individual, you can stick your hand in and you can pull out a 20, and the guy that's passing this bag around, he's not looking, so that there's no kind of judgment on it, because everyone falls under hard times at some point. So instead of us giving money away, you know, and going to the lodge or going to a charity, the charity might need to be that brother, so he could stick his
Oh,
hand
very
without
cool.
any kind of judgment.
I
And I think
love
it's
that.
it's a great concept, and it like it's pretty profound when it comes to our whole act of charity.
Yeah.
You know, like in the EA degree, you know, learning about charity, like it's kind of that same kind of concept.
Mhm.
And they just they kick it up a notch. So that's one of those things, Justin, that we've learned, that could potentially improve our lodges, by adopting some of these things.
I like that.
Quite
Yeah.
honestly, Rusty, that's true Masonic charity.
Yes.
Right.
Not the
Right. That was
charity
the
that we
original.
do now.
Yes, that was the original.
The original
Yeah.
intent is taking care of your brother.
Absolutely.
That's what the Masonic charity stands for.
Yes.
So that's awesome.
I
That
love
really
One of
is
the
awesome.
lodges officer is there's an officer designated precisely or with the sole purpose of doing uh charity. And so he's the one who's responsible for going with the bag. And it's in a constitution that if a meeting does not end with that ritual of, if we don't circulate the bag, the meeting doesn't count. So
Wow.
it's in the constitution.
Wow.
Nice.
We have to circulate it, and everything that Rusty said is true. And if you can either put in or take out. And the only reason I want to like emphasize or talk about this a little bit more is because part of when I was talking about before about trust in the past, I think that trust has been broken by bad actors. So there's been people in Mexico who may abuse the fraternity. And so they may, go to an American lodge and say, hey, like, I'm a brother and I'm in need. And I know about this because I know it happened.
Mhm.
And the brothers and in the US, like if they have a chat, they'll like be like, hey, a brother from Mexico reached out, he's in need and he's a brother, so, let's help him out. One thing, a lot of the grandmasters that I've talked to from Mexico, they all agree on the same thing. They if a brother from Mexico is in that situation, they have a lodge in Mexico. And so I think that's like step number one is going to the person's like to your lodge. If your lodge cannot help, go to your grand lodge. If your grand lodge cannot help, go to the grand lodge of like Texas or whatever. So I think that's something that I think is important to call out, because I think it's part of like this process of establishing trust. So yeah.
One thing that I would like to see out of this conference, and this may be a far stretch, but and I don't like the negative stereotype of the Mexican towns, the people, this and that. When I first went over, I was a little nervous, because that's all you hear from the American media is how bad it is
Right.
down there, right? And and I watch some cartel shows, and it kind of scares you and stuff. But you know what? I never felt threatened. I never felt unsafe. I never felt scared. Never felt any of that. And what I would like to see this happen is what our government cannot do. I think we can do as Masonry is bring the people together along that border.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Masons were path setters, right? They're the ones that put us to work. We're the ones that built this country, this and that. And the current situation that we're in with Freemasonry is all we've got away from that. We've got away from our original intent of Freemasonry, right? And I know Alex, I know Russ very well. Their intent is the same as my intent, is to return us back to the greatness that we had, right? The greatness that we had will flow over into this conference, and I agree with Russ. It's gonna be big. It may take 40 years, but it'll be right up there with the Conference of the Grand Masters one of these days, guaranteed. Because how can you sit in Oklahoma or Colorado or Utah and not want to visit and learn about your brothers from another country, and when we're having this conference right here?
Absolutely.
I truly do believe what Russ just said, that This is going to change it, and we need to refocus. We need to quit worrying about membership, because that's what we've done. We're so worried about membership that we changed everything in our bylaws just to make it easy on membership. You know.
Yep.
Well, and it's not membership; it's brotherhood, is what it is.
And I think like there's two sides to that value that Freemasonry provides. It's the personal value for the individual, but I also think that like Steve was saying, we need to make an impact as an institution.
Yes.
I feel we seem obsessed, like, you know, like just the daily news cycle and politicians, like we seemed obsessed with the things that makes us that make us different, right? We're focusing on, you know, left versus right, liberals versus conservatives, political party A versus B, and the landscape is pretty much the same in Mexico as well. Like we're not immune to that. But if you really think about that, we need to recognize that divisive rhetoric, it basically is the complete opposite of the ideals that we espouse as Freemasons, right?
Yes.
Liberty, equality, and fraternity. And so our institution has been around for literally centuries, like hundreds of years. And throughout all those years, we've faced challenges like the ones we face right now, or even worse. Like there's been, you know, wars and
Literal wars.
revolutions.
Yes.
Exactly. So
Yes.
so we face worse challenges. But throughout those years, we've always prevailed as an institution. Freemasonry has always been there. And the reason why I think it has prevailed is because the members of the institution actually take action. Like when it comes to taking action, we do take action, and we recognize that the actions that we take have an impact in our communities. Going back to what Rusty was saying, that Chamizal event, that action, it wasn't between the four walls of our lodge. It was an action that took place in the community that united, like Rusty said, like all, you know, creeds and colors, and it had an effect, and we're still seeing the ripples of that community action. And for instance, there was like another thing that I really liked about this past November session, where when we had all the grandmasters that we talked about, and most worshipful buildings here in Juarez, is that weekend was declared in El Paso as the Grandmasters Weekend by, I forget exactly which like body, like the city council, the courthouse, but it was declared
Right.
as the the Grandmasters Weekend because of the fact that Grandmaster from Groton Lodge, Texas was going to be here meeting with other Grandmasters from the vicinity. And this was in El Paso. In Juarez, we the mayor of the city, we sat with the mayor, and the mayor gave some diplomas recognizing the work that we do to several people that are there, including the grandmasters that were there. So this, like, coming out of our like four walls, I think is something that we should continue to do, just like having an impact in our communities, and an impact that, you know, it not only includes charity, but, you know, more having, like, looking for that positive impact in the community is, I think, something that I think, you know, we should continue doing, because that's the second element, I think, in providing value, in addition to the personal element.
At this time, I'd like to open up just conversation for final thoughts. Alex?
I don't really have much more to say than we've talked. I think it was a great conversation. I'm really glad that you guys have allowed us to promote this binational conference in your show. We know it's an important show, and it is an important conference. So, you know, thank you for that. And I look forward to meeting you all in person, whether in, you know, Waco or on the conference in Ensenada, or in the binational conference here in November. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Rusty?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Alex says. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of sit and chew on the fat with you all. And I think that it's equally important, you know, to just give a shout out to the relationships that have been developed. I mean, with Alex, I thank you for all your friendship over the years. I mean, it's been what, 7, 8 years now. Steve, a couple years. I mean, hanging out with Alex and Steve and Silao. And what they didn't mention was that Silao was kind of the business portion, but we ended up going to San Miguel de Allende. And if you guys have seen what was that show, Coco, or
Oh
what was
yeah,
Yeah.
the movie Coco.
The cartoon?
the
Yeah,
cartoon
animated?
Coco?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're
The
talking about the
cartoon.
palace.
Well, no,
Yes.
that Coco show, they all went to San Miguel and they got inspiration, and basically the entire cartoon is drawn in San Miguel. So it was great.
Oh, okay.
I took my wife and we hung out with Alex and his wife. Steve came with his wife, and we got to hang out and really, get to know each other, and I have to say, when we first got to the airport and with Steve and like everything was quiet. We were all, and it just slowly, it was like an onion just being opened up. And I mean, and now like I can talk to Steve just about anything. The same with Alex and Dennis and Justin. We haven't spent a whole lot of time, just in passing and Waco or whatever. But I mean, this is a huge opportunity for us to broaden those relationships. And the last thing that I want to just stress is there's a kind of a proverb or like a saying that the tree that you plant today is something that you'll never get to enjoy the shade. And that's what we're doing here. I have a newborn son, and what I'm doing here is hopefully building a fraternity that he can be proud of, and
Right.
that he can propagate to his offspring, and that someday people are going to be looking at us like, we're the ones that saved the craft, from demise. I mean, Dennis, you talked about that YouTube video and you talked about the desolate towns that are dying. What you didn't really talk about, you kind of touched on it, is the same could be true about the dying lodges.
Yeah.
I mean, I came from a rural lodge, and it's like all we hear about is demise lodges and consolidated lodges. And if we just had men that would step up and then and kind of fill those lodges, we wouldn't have to demise them, and I think that's what we're doing here is we're creating this movement. And I mean, the Masonic improvement is a very key, kind of nomenclature for it. I mean, what we're doing is improving masonry so that we get in it what we thought we were going to get, and we can pass it on to future generations. So Justin and Dennis, my hat's off to you. I mean, this is what you guys are doing is phenomenal,
Appreciate that.
and I got a
Thank
lot
you.
of EAs, that are getting initiated, and they hop on and they're just like thirsty for knowledge. That's hey, have you seen this Masonic improvement? Is this something I can listen to? And it's like, sure, you know.
Love that.
I mean, it's like you guys are you have a very great product, that's really going to improve us, and make this, into a glorious fraternity like it once was. So,
I appreciate that.
thank you, brothers, for taking the leadership to do this, and just trudging on, because I know it's hard.
Yeah, that means a lot
Thank you.
hearing that. So definitely, and congratulations on your newborn.
Thank you.
Not to derail, but I do want to point out also when I had my first son, that's about the same time I started all this, and for very similar reasons, because I wanted there to be an organization for my children to be able to take part in if they chose to. So I totally on point with what you're saying. I get where you're coming from. Steve, Brother Amagur.
I'd like to thank both of y'all for having me on again. I thoroughly enjoyed it, as I did the last time. I want to touch on a little bit of what Brother Dennis said. Um, I don't ever believe that our fraternity was ever meant to be as big as it was. Honestly, don't believe that.
I agree.
I believe that we inflated it for membership, and I've said that already. But I do believe that we are the fraternity or the brotherhood that's going to change the world. I do believe that 100%. We have
Love it.
something to offer, and people are slowly but surely coming back around to that type of thinking. You know, what we've done to masonry, we did that to ourselves, right? And everywhere that I travel, you can see it from not just the leadership, but down into the local lodges. The mentality is changing. It's not the same mentality that it was 10, 15 years ago.
I
That's
agree.
for sure. And that's great for our fraternity. The binational conference is going to be one for the ages. I can tell you that right now, because it's a labor of love from us, and we haven't labored too much, but there's going to be a lot more labor coming up pretty soon that we're going to have to get to, right? So, but there's nobody I would want to work with besides these two guys right here, Alex and Rusty. They're the best. There's no telling what we're going to be able to knock out. That first conference is going to be big. It's going to be something that we need to make sure that we promote, we get that thing out there, and you know what? If it's sparsely attended, that's okay. That's all right, right? It's got to start. It's got to start. But thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I love listening to the podcast. I work in my truck all the time. I don't sit in a cubicle all day, but
Was that a dig?
but
Don't
I
be
work in my
That's
jealous.
truck.
funny. That's
I'm
funny.
in a warm office while you're in the cold New Mexico coldness.
Yeah, I listen to podcasts all the time, and this is one of them that I listen to quite frequently, and I really appreciate it. Y'all are doing a great job, and I look forward to seeing y'all. And thanks again, brothers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, my final thoughts are that we've had a lot of conversations with a lot of Masons, and I want to preface with that because I don't want to disparage anything, because every conversation has been important and has brought value. But I feel as though this conversation with us is probably one of the most important conversations that we've had to date, simply because of the historic value of what this conference is going to bring to the table for Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and Mexico and whoever else decides to get involved. It's very exciting. I know when Dennis went to Mexico, he came back with a lot of stories of what he saw, good stories. And my thoughts were, I really wish there was some way that we could start implementing these things here in the States. It doesn't happen without communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
One guy just can't start doing it, because we have Grand Lodge laws. You can't just do whatever you want, right? But things can change over time with the right exposure. And going back to like what Rusty said, I mean, you're absolutely correct. I mean, you called me out on it, but you're absolutely right. With the leadership, like the dancing and everything. That's what I mean. You guys started the dance. Here's more people now. We're joining in. And so it's really exciting to see what kind of changes, and I know that's a dirty word, but what kind of, let's put it this way, what kind of improvements this conference will bring to Freemasonry for all of our jurisdictions.
Mm-hmm.
So that said, thanks again for coming on, and appreciate everyone. And
Hey.
Oh,
He
I was
was
so
trying,
close.
he trying so hard. I almost let you just to let you have one. Brothers, I am so grateful for y'all coming on. This, y'all are well, I gotta say, four of my very favorite people in this world are right here, and I really enjoyed, the time that I get to spend with y'all, and I can't wait for the next binational. I will be there for sure, and hopefully you guys will be able to come on the 16th of September as well.
Where's that going to be at?
I'll tell you about that
Yes,
after.
Dennis, where will that be, Dennis?
We will discuss that after, and I'll
I'm
explain
learning about
why
this too. This is new information to me. Tell me more.
Oh, this is what we had talked about before, but it's just the date that it'll
Okay.
happen. But anyways, there's nothing more important to me than the realization that our fraternity is a worldwide fraternity, and that we do have each other to pull from, and we have each other to grow from and learn from, and we ought to be taking advantage of that. If we're not doing that, we're not getting all the light that Freemasonry has to offer. And that's why we do this podcast to try to, we're just saying what you're already thinking, right? That's why you like to listen to us. That's why you love our guests, because we're already talking about things that you're already thinking. We're talking about things you're already thinking. So, there's nothing necessarily new that comes from us, but it can be a little bit of a slap in the face sometimes. And I would have to say that this binational conference is the best slap in the face that we could have in the last 30, 40, 50 years of Freemasonry, because this is truly showing an intentional effort to bring brothers together, and for the betterment of our fraternity and the betterment of our world. And I truly believe that's what's happening. And I'm so grateful that you guys have started this, and I'm even more happy that we get to be part of your cheerleaders, and put it out there on the World Wide Web for the world to hear us, which is kind of cool that, we have brothers that are asking us now to start filming our live shows during different hours so that they can get it over in Europe and Australia. So just so that this is going out there, and this is the same message we need to be sending all around the world. All of our grand jurisdictions should be doing this. We should all be seeing what we can do to build this brotherhood together, and make this the fraternity that it used to be when Benjamin Franklin was able to go to France to get help in the American Revolution, because he had brothers in France that came over to help. It's that very same thing, having that brotherhood to lean on. And that's what's inspiring about this to me, is that, I absolutely love the culture in Mexico. And of course, my wife is Hispanic, and my daughter is mixed. She's a mixed daughter, whatever that is. But she's got that heritage. So of course we're going. So anytime you invite us, Alejandro, we're there. We're all about it. We want to be a part of it. And another thing that y'all touched on that I'd like to touch on real quick, y'all's families knowing each other. That's important. Yeah, it's good for us to get together. Yeah. But after the meetings, or a day later or a day earlier, our families need to get together. We need to have a fiesta. That way we have those girls involved too. Once they're invested, then it's all over. We just get to show up and have fun and do whatever we want to do, because the girls will make it a date.
You had me at Fiesta.
So anyways, thank you everybody for coming, and I can't say how proud I am that I know the beginning members of the binational Masonic convention, and I can't wait to be a part of it next year. We're going to get y'all back on the show at different times, promoting it throughout the year. And we'll probably do individual interviews with you guys so that we can have more time in what your Freemasonry is all about. With that being said, thank you all for joining us and listening to our show. We wouldn't be who we are without you. We're just saying what you're thinking, and keep it between the points, brothers.
See y'all in the next episode.
Thank you.
Yeah.